Welcome to the road to 1 million US dollars. Let's get right into the Bitcoin chart for today, starting on this 4-hour time frame for Bitcoin, because right now you can see that we are perfectly bouncing from this 0.236 Fibonacci level, sitting at about 99.4K. Therefore, if we just look back over the last couple of days, everything is still looking completely fine in my opinion, even with this big drop that we saw here on that last 4-hour candle. What I'm simply seeing here is a retracement down to this Fibonacci golden pocket, then breaking the downtrend here, even breaking this descending line of resistance as well, and now holding this Fibonacci level as a level of support so far, of course. In the case that we break down below this 0.236, then we start looking at the 0.382, sitting at 97.8K. Overall, so long as we are holding above this Fibonacci golden pocket, sitting at about 95K, then I am simply still just bullish on Bitcoin, right? If we now start cutting below this, then I will start looking at the Bitcoin liquidation heat map again, maybe even looking at this 89K level, because there is still quite a bit of liquidity at this range here. But at the same time, so long as we are not breaking down any of those important levels of support, I think there is no point in really worrying about some kind of major crash. Because if we take a look at the Bitcoin liquidation heat map, I think this is actually very, very instructive what we saw here earlier today. Because first, you can see that right here, we took out a big pocket of liquidity sitting at about 102K. And this was over $200 million worth of short positions that got taken out of the market. But then what did we see after grabbing all of this liquidity here? We then reversed to the downside perfectly down to this big pocket of liquidity, stopping out all of those late long positions that actually entered when we were getting this small run up right here. I know that sometimes I get comments about the Bitcoin liquidation heat map saying that it adds no value or something like that, but I strongly disagree with this because you can use these big pockets of liquidity as areas that the Bitcoin price might get attracted to. And of course, it's not going to be perfect. Like, for example, we took out that big pocket and went higher than that before reversing. But at the same time, if you know where everyone has their stop loss, you could also consider just placing your entry where other people have their stop loss. So when everyone's getting taken out of the market and everyone's losing money, that's actually when you enter into your position. And then from there, you actually long, for example, in this case, right? So obviously, this is not financial advice. I'm not telling you that you should be doing this. I'm just telling you that this is something that I am considering when I am trading on leverage. Either way, there is still some liquidity to the downside here, even as low as about 98.5K, roughly speaking. I think more importantly, we should be taking a quick look at the 2-week Bitcoin liquidation heat map. Again, we just took out a big level of liquidity at about 102K. There is still that liquidity at 94K and 90K, etc., like I was talking about earlier in this video. But I think for now, most of the liquidity is in fact to the upside, sitting as high as about 104,000. And to me, it would seem very surprising if we do not end up taking out this level of liquidity here. So what I am saying is that my base case expectation here is that sometime soon, I do think we are going to see new all-time highs being printed for Bitcoin. I don't know if we first have to do something like this, continue flipping this trend line into a level of support before then resuming to the upside, or if it's just going to be this. But like I said, so long as we are not breaking down below this Fibonacci golden pocket, my base case expectation is that we are going to see new all-time highs for Bitcoin relatively soon here. Maybe a good example of why I'm being a little bit more cautious is because what you saw here recently is that we had this descending trend line, right? So this was first acting as a level of resistance. We then broke that level of resistance, but we spent quite a bit of time flipping this into a level of support before we actually got that next move to the upside. So as I was saying in yesterday's video, right, it might be the case that we are doing something like this, where we're creating some kind of inverse head and shoulders pattern. And then once we actually start breaking out above that 102K level, roughly speaking, that would be some kind of confirmation signal that very, very likely we are going to see new highs being printed for Bitcoin. So I am on the lookout for that. But for now, there is no inverse head and shoulders pattern just yet. It is actually still taking some more time for that to really play out. And of course, potentially it doesn't play out at all, right? If we just get a move up here and gets rejected here once again, then it would simply not even activate any price targets for that inverse head and shoulders, right? So that is why this is just all very early stages, but I am looking at it ahead of time to make sure I don't miss anything important in the charts here. And if we take a look at this 4-hour time frame for Bitcoin from a different perspective, you can see that this is an ascending line of support, and right here we have an ascending line of resistance. So for now, especially since we're in the middle of this range as well, there isn't too much to really say about this pattern, but I am keeping this in the back of my mind for the next time that we either get to a level of support here or a critical level of resistance. In terms of support, the critical level to watch is 96K as of the time of recording. And in terms of resistance, that is sitting at about 106K. So like I said, currently we're in the middle of the range, so not going to worry about it too much. However, I did want to share this ahead of time so we can start taking a look at it again once we get closer to that support or resistance. Either way, let's take a quick look at the Bitcoin ETF flow tables. Yesterday, we saw a relatively small inflow of over $200 million into the Bitcoin ETFs. But still, guys, this is obviously still a massive day from the Bitcoin ETFs. And so long as we keep seeing hundreds of millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin being bought every single weekday, then obviously this is going to have an upwards pressuring effect on the Bitcoin price. Either way, this has been today's market update. Thank you very much for watching once again, and I will see you tomorrow in the next one.